Good morning. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock, and welcome to Forum. My name is Barbara Bynum. I am one of the organizers and moderators that make Forum happen. I'm joined by my friends Kathy Heavers, Judy and Files, and Phoebe Benzinger, and we work really hard to bring our community an interesting educational program almost every Wednesday. And that's a great segue to tell you that we will not be having Forum next week. So hopefully you're enjoying Thanksgiving with some friends or family, but please don't show up next Wednesday morning to Forum. We will not be here. This morning, the county and their consultants are going to give us a very formal presentation about the Montrose County Master Plan update. And this process is fascinating, and the more of our community who's involved, the better the end product. So I'm super glad to see such a great turnout this morning. I see some faces that I don't recognize. So if you're new to forums, welcome. We love having you here. If you are not getting an email on Saturday mornings telling you what is going to be happening at the forum, please come get a card with a QR code. It's super easy to sign yourself up and get on our email list. And all we do is send you out information about the forum. So if you're new, welcome. Thanks for coming. Looks like we're even bringing in extra chairs. What a great turnout. So with no further ado, let's give, Tallmadge, Richmond, is the county's planning director, and he is going to introduce their consultants. Let's give them a big welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Barbara, and thank you all for coming out today. As she said, the Montrose County is updating our master plan. We're really excited about that. If this is the first time you've heard about that, we're at the very beginning stages, so you're not too late. Tell your friends all about it. We're having public meetings tonight at the County Event Center. Tonight, 4 to 7. It's an open house style, so there won't necessarily be a presentation, but open house style to get your feedback. There's also one in Olathe at the community center, 4 to 7 as well. If people aren't available to come to that, plenty other opportunities to comment. You can get in touch with us, the planning department. You can get in touch with Alicia and Rochelle are here today. They're consultants writing the master plan and collecting feedback from you all. We also have a survey available to collect information. So tell at least 5 of your friends about the meetings tonight, and hopefully we can see you out there tonight and get your feedback. We'll also have some interaction today, but I'll turn the time over to Alicia and Rochelle, who will talk about what a master plan is and what we're doing.
Thank you, Tallmadge. I'm Alicia Ayers. I'm with SCJ Alliance, and I'm joined by my colleague Rochelle Bradley. We have an office in Gunnison, Crescent Butte, and Boulder, and then several offices in Washington. We're both from Washington as well, but we love being in Montrose and have had a great time already being here. We were out at Mayor last night and had a great turnout. So thank you for being here this morning, and we'll go ahead and get started on our presentation. As Tallmadge mentioned, this is on the master plan update. Okay, so what is a master plan? So a master plan is generalized, comprehensive, long-range, evolving, and informs your zoning regulations at the county level. This is not a plan that determines what's going on inside city limits, although there is a relationship between county and city, the way that they plan and how they interact and how growth occurs. The master plan is codified by the Colorado State codes, so it is a requirement of the state. The state is pretty broad in how they say that it is applied and what you plan for, but you do need to plan for long-range growth and development and what that development looks like. So as part of our effort, we want to make sure that we include some visioning within this process so we can think about what's going to happen in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years and what you want your team to look like. So like I said, we're going to be addressing vision, we're going to be addressing goals and policies. In order to achieve that vision, There will be action items that implement those actions that need to take place to achieve those goals and policies. And then that will help with the development within the county, and of course that interaction between the city and the county or other agencies that, you know, interact with the county. You have a lot of federal lands and parks, federal parks lands and that kind of thing, and how do those things interface? So Montrose County Master Plan, so it's kind of high level at the state, what they require, and then within the Montrose County Master Plan, like I said, it guides growth and physical development. It helps to make decisions about what kind of developments occur, sometimes what they look like. Some communities are more prescriptive than others. Where they are located, where specific growth is located, and what that looks like as far as commercial, residential, retail. We want to engage the public with every step of this process. So Tallmadge mentioned some of the open house events that we have going on this week. We have a survey online, which I have some paper copies over here, and I'll get into more of that public engagement, what that looks like in a couple of slides here. And we want to make sure that we have that vision and have a collective vision, right? So our purpose here today is really to get your feedback on various areas of planning so that we can implement that into the plan and determine what that countywide vision looks like. Okay, so some topics covered in the Montrose County Master Plan. I have them bulleted out here on the slide. They are subject to change. The requirement of the state is to address land use and development standards and your code. But some topics that are in the current master plan include natural resources, agriculture, economic development, so on and so forth. And so to investigate whether these things are still priorities within the county, we're going to be asking some questions from you today and at our open house meetings and within that survey to investigate how important they are. How are they prioritized? Are they at the top of the community's list? Or are they somewhere in the middle or maybe at the bottom? And that's going to really help ensure that we achieve that long-term vision for the county. So here's a snapshot of the county here. We have the county-wide, of course, and then there are 4 planning areas. I'm not sure if many have seen this map, but of course Montrose here in the center, the South Valley planning area. These are really just sort of a guide for how we think about the county and divide it up and recognize the differences. But the plan is countywide, and so it spans across even these internal boundaries, sectioning off these planning areas. And of course, we have recognized, and the county recognizes as we've gone out and talked to people from the open houses, there are different characteristics and priorities within these planning areas. And so our process is really to distill this information that we're getting and synthesize it down into something that is achievable in these separate areas that have different characteristics. Okay, so why is the plan important to you? So the first is that it provides a foundation for all of planning within the county. I talked a lot about that, about our communication with other agencies and how we achieve that vision. It sets budget standards and requirements, and so that our implementation and action to achieve those goals and that vision are budgeted so that we can continue to work towards that as we go through the coming years. And it helps the community, helps build on our communities. So, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, Montrose was probably a much different place than it is today. And we want to recognize where those things that we recognized 10 or 20 years ago are still present and a priority, and where things have changed and where there are new priorities.
So there's a schedule that's been provided by the county. It's also available on the county's website. If you search it in Google, just Montrose County Master Plan Update, or there's a / with the Montrose County Master Plan Update. And so this details out the different schedule for it. We are early on in the process with the engagement. There's a lot more activities that are going to be occurring. We're right in the middle of the blue. And then there will also be the preparation and adoption, so there'll be lots of opportunities for you to be involved in the process and to make comment. For public engagement, as Alicia indicated, we're in the midst of that with our open house. We also have a survey available. There's a QR code at the end, and if you're not savvy with the computer, no problem, we have printed copies as well, and you can return those to the county. So we have a variety of engagement opportunities for you. This has there's the core team, so that includes us consultants and the county's team that are working together and collecting all the feedback. We have orientation interviews. We've interviewed about 40 individuals throughout the county that have guided us and given input so far. You'll actually see some of the feedback we've received early on, and we want to hear from you if it's on target or if you have additional feedback. We have that community survey, as I said. There's these visioning workshops and open houses that are occurring this week, and then there'll be the master plan rollout. So part of this process as well is looking at your development code and doing an audit of that and comparing it to what the state's requirements are. So there's been a previous update in 2022 to your zoning regulations. How many of you know what zoning is? I was like, you're an educated group because you come here, so you know. A lot of people don't know, but the county has zoning designations that indicate what permitted uses or standards or development regulations are implemented in that zone. And so we look at that. We're also going to do the audit of the current code and look at what's working and what's not based on the feedback we've received. If there's certain uses in the county that aren't making sense in a certain planning area or there's concerns, this is an opportunity for us to look at the code and see how we can use the code to address those. There's also adapting, amending, and fine-tuning the code, making sure, again, it's coherent with your state requirements, and then integrating your goals and community vision with the code, and having the implementation strategy. So we're looking at existing conditions right now to kind of give you a backbone snapshot of the community and also for us to look at as well. And it sets an idea of we've got what's going on now in 2023, looking all the way out to the future in 2050. It's a long-range vision, a long-range plan, but it's important to have that baseline to start. So we've collected some data, which was also provided by the county through a really comprehensive report that just gives us an idea of what we're expecting for the county. So above in the historic and forecast population, you have about 40,000 individuals in Montrose County, and you're projected to have a 30% increase, as said by the state, to 2050. 30% increase in your population, almost 55,000 people, which is a lot. And so part of this plan is looking at how do we account for and plan for that growth? Because the state says there's a real possibility you might have an increase of 30% of your population in 30 years. And then another thing we're looking at as well is housing. That's a really big component of this plan. Alicia indicated earlier there's a lot of different elements that are included in a master plan. Housing is one of them. And so we know in Montrose County that 24% of your occupied housing units are renters versus 75% own. In comparison to the state is more 66% or 2/3 of the population are homeowners. So you have a really high population in the county compared to the state of homeowners. And then you also have a varying degree over time of rental vacancy rates. Rental vacancy rates can give you an idea of how healthy your housing market is. If you have at least 5% is the typical industry standard for what a healthy vacancy rate is. If you're about there, you know, okay, rents aren't as high because there's sufficient available rental units. And so you're right about there right now, and that's consistent with the state. So we're looking at how can we preserve that so that there can be continued affordability in the county for renters. And then in comparison to housing costs versus household income, you can see on this graph below, green is where your median gross rent has gone across throughout the county in the last 20 years, and orange is what your value index is. So you see that your rent has been more consistent and stagnant increase, but your home value has increased by like 200% almost in the last 20 years. That's how much your housing has gone up. So, and that's consistent with what we're seeing nationwide, but it is something we need to account for and address through this process. We also have been looking at employment by industry, number of jobs that are associated with that, and the biggest sector number of jobs is healthcare and social assistant, which is actually something we're seeing as a national-wide trend as well. And then the county has been issuing a lot of residential permits since 2020, almost 450. So we do know as well that there is an intent to build additional residential in the county. We want to continue that to ensure that housing is affordable and available for individuals. And with that, we're going to transition a little bit into the mapping of existing conditions. So in addition to having your zoning designations, you also have land use. Although something may be zoned as like a single family residential, that doesn't always mean that that's what the land use is. Often that is the case, but land use doesn't always equivalent to that. Land use is what is actually currently happening in the use of that land. And so we're looking at updating that and doing a future land use as well. And let's see, you guys have, how many? There's like 9. I'm bad at counting. Don't tell anybody. There's 9 different land uses, and the green largely is general agriculture. The dark green, the light green is public lands, which the county doesn't have jurisdiction over, but it is something that is being considered as we're doing analysis and looking at future land use. There's also for land ownership, so again, we have a large variety of public and state sectors that own land, and then all the light blue or periwinkle color is what is in private ownership. Another thing that has popped up a lot in our conversations with the core team, with the county staff, and in the interviews is water. Water is a very limited resource in Colorado State and in the county, and we're looking at where there are water resources and also looking at irrigation ditches and irrigation canals, because that's how a lot of water is transported within the county, especially to agricultural uses. So we've been considering that as well. I'm gonna let you cover it.
Okay, transportation and economic development. So this is a part of the presentation where we're going to get a little interactive. We're hoping that you'll have some comments up to this point. And actually, why don't I ask if anyone has any questions up to this point before we dive into this part?
I'm actually gonna suggest you hold off on questions.
Because this group is great at questions, and unless you want to spend the next 45 minutes on questions,
Okay.
you guys should keep going, and then we'll do questions at the end. Sorry, but that's,
Okay.
This is interactive now,
so interactive is fine, but questions is just an open-ended, you'll never get your program back.
Okay. Apologies. We'll stick with
That's
the
because you guys are great
interaction.
at asking questions.
And that is great, because we really want your feedback. We've got about 5 slides now where we're asking some questions and want to get your reaction to things. So on this slide, of course, we're looking at the transportation system countywide. We've also included rivers, streams, and then some of the trails as well. So the trails are in the really thick lines here, streams are in blue, and then of course you're probably pretty familiar with your road system, but we've got the major corridors listed on the map. So what improvements do you think need to be made to the transportation system countywide? That's our first question.
So we're gonna go with just quick answers to her questions, not speeches.
Yes, there should be a connection between city trails and county trails.
Okay, city trails and quick county trails.
I'm Wayne Comstock. I have a recommendation for like a potential transportation plan is that it's kind of put in place and it doesn't have to be voted on by the commissioners, because then it just becomes a political time bomb. But it's a very important thing for the community's health and safety.
Thank you.
I think there needs to be a connection between Highway 50 and 550. which
Highway
is
50
east of-
and 550, so right here.
Yeah, but that's further to the east on 50,
Oh, I see. This direction.
so bypass Montrose.
Thank you.
Following up on that, 10, 15 years ago, there was discussion about having a beltway
Oh, okay.
development around the community that would help to divert some of the traffic that really is going through. Another part of transportation, there seem to be a lot of what are identified as affordable housing, low-income housing. But it is out at the edges of town where there's not transportation for folks to get into work or shopping or so on. So that is kind of a disconnect where if people don't have a car, they are not really able to participate in the community.
Okay, just want to repeat that back. So what I heard was, on that last part, there are low-income folks or residing on the outskirts of Montrose City, and they're not able to transport into town for services. And then the second point was, of course, the connection from 50 to 550 East, but also maybe a separate transportation route outside of the city that you can get from 550 to 50. And we did hear that, and we've seen that in our survey. We actually addressed that question head on. But if folks want to provide more input about, should we have another route that's outside the city limits, we'd be interested in that, and more specifically, where? So we'll go ahead and take more questions.
Yeah, just to, I think, follow up on that, an encouragement on public transportation, if you would say that, because there's the cost of transport. I see, buses going around, but just for sure intentional effort to increase it, and then also the education or encouraging people to use it as well.
Any other comments on transportation?
Wally Smith. I live at the new signal on 550, and we met personally with my wife and I. We went to the city, we went to the county, and we went to the state. It's a total disaster. They don't know what they're doing. They won't listen to anybody, and just look at it. I have more complaints about how they've done this, and it's a mess. Somebody needs to use a little bit of reality and common sense, or we might as well forget it.
And just to clarify, what are you seeing, backed up traffic or increased accidents, or what are you perceiving to see there?
Well, since I live right next to the highway, I listen to the ambulances going by.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably the worst mess I've ever seen in my life. And I've been into public transportation, housing. I was on city council in the late 60s. So it's not something that I don't know anything about.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir.
I think we need more recreational paths in areas that are getting large acreage subdivisions. A lot of the ag land is turning into homes on 3 or 4 acres or so on, and there's a lot of people out who want to walk, and there's having to walk right on the edge of busy county roads.
Okay. So more safe transportation for non-motorized pedestrians and bicycles and that kind of thing. And then your point on ag land being developed, so it's being cut up in sort of 4 acre, 5 acre parcels. Is that you think that's a good size, or do we not feel as strongly about that, or?
It's got implications for transportation.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, because you're taking large swaths, and when you chop it up, you still have increased development, which means increased transportation.
Yeah, exactly. Not just car traffic either.
Right.
It's kind of a safety thing.
What would like is clear designation.
Hang on, I'm gonna bring you the mic, because we do record this, and you just can't hear people if they don't have a mic.
So I have a little pet peeve. When you come to Spring Creek, Marine, and 6400 Road, it's a convergence of state and county and another entity, I don't know what it is. And no one wants to deal with that intersection because it's not well designated who's in charge of that road. And sometimes we have a lot of issues there, and everybody comes past and says, well, it's state. Oh no, it's county. And so a little bit leveling of designation on some of those areas where they come together and whose responsibility.
And Rochelle, did you get the roads on that? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it'd be really helpful if you had paid a closer attention to the utility easements and the problem that's created by the county, which most of the county road system was put in place with 40-foot right-of-ways, and that creates all kinds of problems whenever anybody needs to come in and lay in a larger or different utility. It's never really addressed.
Okay, so paying attention to utilities and how that's interacting with these improvements of infrastructure.
Hi, Martha LaBar. What are you building out 550 South? See all that road work and all that construction. What is being built out there?
You know, I might ask Tallmadge to address this question.
Yeah, that's a CDOT project. They're doing some passing lanes through there and fixing some of those. They're fixing some of those.
Access points.
Yeah, the access points that aren't 90-degree angles to fix them, to adjust them to 90 degrees, so you're not turning all the way around to look to see who's coming from the north. But that's a CDOT project.
When do you think they'll be done?
I have no idea. I have to check to CDOT has a website. CDOT has updates on their website.
Unlike my friend from Prescott, Arizona, I think the stoplight down on 550 is a really good example of city-county cooperation. It has increased safety and access to going into town and also going down south on 550.
Okay. Maybe we'll take one more question, then we'll move on to the next slide. We've got a couple others to prompt some questions. One more question before we move on? Okay. Okay, so economic growth and opportunities for economic growth. So here on this map, we've got our land use designations, the zoning, agricultural zoning and irrigated land as well. They're a little smaller, so I apologize, they're a little hard to see. And then for our economic growth, we've got commercial nodes identified in some of the squares and circles and potential areas for economic growth. Again, I apologize, these are pretty small. We'll make sure they're available online. But generally speaking, you can see the gray and the red circles here along 550 and 50, and then another one over here in Natarita for potential growth of commercial industrial lands. So that's one thing we want to investigate a little bit further is, do you agree with where these are located? Generally speaking, are there locations that were not included here that we need to think about? We're really looking at these specific environments and how the transportation system is interacting with the growth that's occurring there, growth meaning development of commercial, retail, industrial lands, as well as residential in some cases. So one of our first questions here is, where is development mostly occurring in the county? And I pointed out those locations. And sort of what's your feedback on that?
Feedback on development.
Wayne Comstock. So I go to a lot of these meetings and I've seen where the designated commercial nodes are, where people try to get commercial properties in there and then they get denied, but then the county turns around and approves commercial properties where there aren't commercial nodes. Mm-hmm. So I think that should be kind of corrected. I mean, it's just kind of misinforming people who purchase. But it definitely should be in areas that have like major collector roads, right? So that it doesn't become burdensome on the county to improve the roads because of that commercial traffic. But also, Montrose County is in the economic development, and so any type of commercial or industrial should be maybe directed towards those areas so that they could take advantage and it makes sense financially.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment there. And in all of this, some of his comment particularly goes back to how the code is being implemented and where. And if we have a blanket wide code that's applying to all areas even outside of these nodes, then we could see development occurring elsewhere. So we really want to be specific about those locations. Thank you for that.
Good morning, Delphine. Good morning. So it is my understanding that we want to try to focus on city limits to grow our housing so we can keep Montrose County for what it is, right? So as you highlight these areas for some of the residential, there are things that I am not as aware, I guess, of where the focus should be. I think we all love to live here because of how beautiful it is in the county.
Mm-hmm.
And then furthermore, for commercial, I couldn't agree more that sometimes it's really misleading when we have investors that come to town, want to buy certain parcels, get denied, and then others get approved. I think that's definitely something that we need to improve upon, which is consistency on where commercial is approved and how the roads can handle it is crucial as well. But it is important for us to have the right investors coming to town. And when we have those, we don't have anything really that fits their investment. If they show up and say, I have 26 million and I'm done in LA, there is nothing that fits here other than, hey, buy Main Street.
You're right.
It's different. So I think that there is room for growth there. And then the focus on subdivisions and knowing what do we want to do, what's the minimum size lots, so on and so forth, should be addressed as well.
Okay, great, thank you. And just to clarify, we're talking countywide, so yes, some of these areas are identified in the county. And I think your question kind of pertained to housing, but I'm sure it pertains to other development types as well. If there's something that we need to be aware of in terms of how housing is being developed in the county, say if there's sprawl, there's housing being developed on a wide scale, I guess, and not as much density. We want to hear about that, or if you like that kind of development, we want to hear about that as well a bit too.
Well, and I think density is crucial, and the numbers that you presented earlier on this 30% growth in the next few years, I actually believe that currently we're down. People are not having as many babies, and even though everybody in this room, I'm sure, feels like we've grown so much, we have, but we're not at all on track or above what we were 10 years ago thinking where we were going to be, right?
Right.
So although I heard you guys say we might have a 30% growth in population, currently we're not on track to reach that at all.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just based on state estimates that they have to release every year.
And I will just add, because we're still in the inventory and analysis phase of the process, we have other demographic information we can collect, and I'm not saying this is absolutely the truth of what's going on, but what I'm gathering from the comments that I'm hearing is that the population is aging, and then there's retirees sort of moving in. So there may not be as many babies, but that population of the older demographic is sort of moving in and here.
So I would encourage you not to forget that, particularly in western Colorado, economic opportunities can include things other than business development. Well, business development can be very broad, so don't, recreation and tourism are the two that come to mind, where taking advantage of that opportunity happens a little bit different way, and it tends to involve interaction with a lot of the other areas that the master plan discusses.
Thank you very much, sir, for that. And that is a great point. It is something that we'll explore a bit further when we have our open house tonight and others that we've had this week. I'll talk with Tallmadge about making maps available for people to reference, but we have mapped out where some of the recreation points are, like our camping, glamping, RVing, and other types of things like that. So it'd be great to hear more comments on that. Of course, again, the survey has some questions that drill down into that as well.
I was wondering, I live out south of town, the old Bar Dairy, and there's a subdivision that's planned right next to me, 31 housing lots. So the issue is, I don't know how they're gonna put in a septic system in 1.1 or 1.2 acre lots. So that's always been the problem. If you're gonna develop out there, you need to have, when is the sewer coming out? Because we're really bound by septic systems and leach fields.
I don't know what she's referring to. I can talk to you after. I don't know which subdivision you're referring to, but we can chat.
Yeah, I wonder what the state projection is going to be for the build out on 30% of our county is private land, or close approximation. So when does that projected build out take place, how much time do we have before we look like Gaza?
Are you talking about the population forecast, the 30%? That's for 2050.
Population and ability to provide proper service.
Right, okay, yeah. The timeline we're going is 2050 for the master plan update, so it's about 30 years out, but I'll make a comment on that as well. And no, thank you.
Perhaps this will be talked about later in the presentation, but on economic growth, the coordination with Ridgeway, Uray, Telluride, as far as, because there's so many people in Montrose
Yeah.
that commute and et cetera, that's part of the challenge on 550. That, you know, a little bit bigger area and integrating that and how, because right now, unless they change some things, that's a lot of pressure on housing in Montrose and all of those kind of things. You're probably thinking about it, but it's just, yeah, I want to make a comment on that. Thank you.
Yeah, life occurs outside of county boundary lines, and we need to accommodate for movement of people in and out of the county as well.
I think we could summarize that by saying think regionally and not just on the county.
Yes.
There should be some type of coordination between developing new properties, whether it's retail or commercial, and internet access.
Okay. Couple more questions and we'll go on to the next slide.
I'm ready. I missed my 5 a.m. exercise class.
It's really good. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. There we go. There. Okay, so this is a little bit different exercise here. And what we want to, there's 3 of these slides, and we're gonna get at the visioning, we're gonna get at issues, and we're gonna get at opportunities. So what you're looking at here is a word cloud of specific topics that we've heard a lot of during our stakeholder interview process. We interviewed about 60 people in small groups. And so the larger the word, the more we heard it said repeatedly. Now this is certainly not inclusive of all the types of visioning categories or issues or opportunities that may be out there, but that's why we want to hear from you. And Rochelle's going to be taking notes on the slide so you can kind of see what those are. So I'm looking for sort of 2 things. One is, you know, explaining some of these terms further if you think they are priorities and they are, you know, visioning for Montrose County. But what terms are not on here at all? You know, we also want to hear about that. And I guess the last thing would be is, you know, are some of these not terms that should be on the future visioning?
Wait, Comstock. So I see senior living is at the top, and it's very important to this community. It always has been. And I heard this thing on the radio that it's projected to grow like 30%. But one thing that I don't see that really links to that is education. And the reason why I tie these 2 together is because, you know, I'm aging and my father and I need help, right? And so when I look at education, you know, I realize that there's a somewhat responsible, somewhat educated, desperate, like, workforce. And I appreciate Mesa State, who we're here, you know, but this is Montrose County. And so I would like to see, like, you know, county college or Montrose College or something like to that. I mean, that's important.
Yeah, and looking at this list and in your group of 60 people that put this together, I'm surprised there's nothing on that about the younger upcoming generation that's not in this room. I don't know how do we get those young people in this room saying what do they see in 20 years? I mean, you're talking to all of us that are 20 years from now, it's going to be somebody else's room. So, I'm a little concerned it's not on that list.
Thank you. That's a great comment. Thank you.
I agree with that. I think a big problem in this community is jobs are not available, good paying jobs, because
prices on homes are just, most people in Montrose that are working, you know, at our level of income can't afford the prices. And the rent you had on there was way low compared to what it is now. Rent is ridiculous. So I think looking forward to how do we keep our young people here in this community? Because to me, we're gonna die if we don't. And I hate that these kids are moving away. You know, they wanna go to college, but this is a great place to raise kids. So I want them to come back, so, thank you.
I think there should be something to do with compliance of existing codes and ordinances. Basically, right now, it's on a complaint basis, which is going to be problematic in the next 20 years. Secondly, I think that there should be some concern about the interface areas between the county and the city. And that's the urban growth boundary, which is the 3-mile boundary. And I think eventually, if the similar codes and ordinances and so forth are not brought together, there's going to be conflicts in the future.
Great, thank you.
Well, I just wanted to point out that accessible fiber internet, EVA elevated plan will have it entirely built out in 3 years. So.
Okay. So accessible to everyone.
Check that, we can check that one off the list. The West End needs it, right.
One of the concerns I keep bringing up on utility problems, back in the early teens, 20 teens, the county had to go ahead and provide and pay for water lines for any kind of road improvements because Tri-County couldn't come up with the toll to go ahead and provide water lines money to buy the pipe and place it outside of the right-of-way, which the county needed to go ahead and put in a proper road bed. And that goes on along with several of the issues of growth. We're going to, possibly, Project 7's looking at a $160 million water plant up there closer to the dam, which is fine. The only trouble is we're really, the issue continues to be how you're going to pay for it.
One of the things with recreation, I would like to see the county and the city work together with the Forest Service, especially, possibly with BLM, on camping areas on the Uncompahgre and different areas around the Sun Forest.
Thank you.
There's some over here.
Okay, let's go one more, 2 more.
Look at Wayne.
I was just interested in the topic of sustainability so that we can retain a livable area.
And on that note, I do think we have people that are younger that are moving here. I'm in real estate and I see a lot of new families in town. I do think that the crucial part is for us to get them engaged. So a lot of them have worked from outside of town because they can't get paid well here. I also think that the city and the county is on point with increasing their the way they pay. So we've seen an increase in salary to attract the right talent in the county and in the city. However, everywhere else in town, everybody is stuck from 10 years ago. I mean, there is a new position for a food and beverage director at the Bridges, which is our highest end restaurant in town, and it pays $60,000 a year. Those things need to be adjusted, right? And again, it's back to education, though. How do we educate the people that are here and have been here forever to live together with the new generation, and how do we engage this new generation? They're here for, the hiking and the biking and the skiing and all that great stuff. So let's have more county events where we draw them out there so they can be involved in the community and see how important it is to be part of the planning commission or to be part and involved in your community to know where they are. I'm not sure you all would want to hear where they want to be and what their vision is, because it might be very different than the people in this room. but it's important to combine them and really know that, I mean, I would say 25% of the county is now new people from not here. So we just need to work with them and engage them.
Great. You know, I'm gonna go on to the next slide. We've got about 2 more. We can take this gal's comment over here too, but then we're gonna go on to the
And we
issues.
end in 15 minutes, and that includes any questions.
I think because affordable place to live is up there, no one has really addressed that. It's huge. I think it needs to be in a much larger font and a lot bolder.
Thank you. Okay, and you know, these conversations on visioning and issues and opportunities sort of cross over into one another, so we did hear some of that on the last slide, but I know that everybody has a different reaction when they see these words. So this one here is obviously our issue slide. What are the issues facing Montrose County? And these are the terms that we've heard through our stakeholder interviews that have come to light. So we'll go ahead and take some questions on the types of issues that you're seeing in the county.
Good morning. I think one of the major issues we face is lack of medical specialists. I've met a number of people who travel to Denver or Salt Lake to see doctors, and some of these folks are elderly, and they're driving over the mountains, or they're having to take expensive airplane flights.
And I don't see that on the slide here, but that is definitely something we've heard in our stakeholder interviews, the lack of medical folks.
I think mine's more of a question where it says farmland protections, and I'm not necessarily we need protections, but why is that in your interview? Why is that so small? Because it's such a huge industry. It's still a huge part of Montrose, and there's continuing houses on the farmland. There's lots of aspects, but I'm surprised that that's such a small font, and was just kind of curious on that. If anybody could comment.
So you think it should be a larger font because it's a greater issue?
Well, I guess my question is, I'm surprised in the feedback that you've already collected that it's such small font. I think that's, I'm curious.
Yeah, can you tell us again where you were, who gave input to this information?
Yeah, so we that was gonna hit on that. So there were 60 stakeholder interviews, and like I said, we're not done with that process, so that definitely could expand the size of that font there. But the interviewers that we approached were ag folks, transportation, utilities, community champions, if you will, people who have been very big advocates of their community that span all across the county. So there were folks in Natarita and Nucla and Mayor, of course Montrose and Olathe, and elsewhere. And then we also met with select planning commissioners for some of the different cities. I know Montrose was one that we talked to, utility workers. There was a whole list of those folks.
Thanks. Other comments for what are the issues Montrose County faces? Come on over.
I just wanted to point out that in over the last 100 years, we've got data on temperature change here. In Montrose County, it's risen over 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit over the last 100 years. So I think we need to have something up there that talks about climate change.
Thank you.
I'd like to see something about wildfire mitigation, especially some coordination between the public and private lands and how that can all work together, because it is going to be it's not a matter of if, but when.
You know, there is no problem with Montrose County. It's fantastic. No, but there are things that we can improve, and with that wildfire thing, a super important thing is the transportation infrastructure. Like if there was a wildfire and it was on Spring Creek, it's like, how do the fire department get up there? Or when there is an emergency and the fire department has to go through 10 90-degree turns, like what's the safety for those first responders? You know, in doing those you know, 90-day return, so the transportation plan is super important.
Well, let's take another question, then let's go to the opportunities slide.
What do you mean by character? It's in big,
Yes.
right, big letters down there. What do they mean by that?
Most of the comments that we've heard is in preservation of character. So keeping, for instance, places more rural, if we're talking to people in Navarita, or Nucla, or Mayor, or preserving your way of life here in Montrose as well.
Like in a small town atmosphere?
Yeah, and I think, you know, going back to the planning areas, we're recognizing that that character changes in different areas as well, and we also want to find what's that overarching character of Montrose County that is consistent in all of the areas. So there are some differences in, and then of course that overarching as well.
Sorry, that's all right.
Oh.
Yeah, since we're so agriculturally oriented and have so many amenities out on our public lands, invasive species are just hammering us all over our county, hurting agriculture, hurting our wildlife habitat. I'd like to see invasive species be recognized.
Okay. Let's go into the opportunity slide, Michelle. Okay, so here are the terms that we've heard for our opportunities. And I think I heard a few opportunities on our last slide as well, but what are your reactions to some of these terms? There's a chuckling.
It's so much more fun to complain.
Being in the construction industry all my life, gravel mining, yes, you have to watch out, there's a big uproar. But I want my damn footing poured tomorrow, and what is that footing has concrete and gravel in it. So we have to accept where it comes from, reality.
Another opportunity that hasn't been talked about today is tourism. It's growing, it's gonna keep growing. We have some really amazing assets here in Montrose County, and we should be working towards sustainable tourism opportunities, ways to educate the public so that our open spaces stay healthy.
Great, thank you.
Remote working.
Okay.
That ties into that fiber, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Any others?
Here, I'm gonna go here because I'm on this side, and then I'll go over there.
I'll give you a workout.
That's great.
So we have one of the most fantastic airports
Yes.
on the western slope. And I think we're doing a great job as far as, working with other, areas, Telluride and Crescent View and so forth to improve that. And I think it's an opportunity that continues to grow.
I'd just like to add the woody biomass in this area is huge. We got the best sawmill in the state, and if you're going to deal with wildfires, let's deal with our woody biomass.
There was a hand over here, I saw.
Not to toot the horn again, but one of your opportunities here is the availability of internet and high-speed internet.
Yes, thank you. Maybe one or two comments, and then we're going to wrap up. We've got about 5 minutes.
I'm coming, Delphine.
Sorry.
No, all good.
I think also we don't talk much about families overall. We have a wonderful place to raise children. The rec is awesome, but it's already saturated in my opinion. There is just so much that we can do to be family focused. It's an amazing place to raise kids.
Great, thank you for that. Last comment here.
I would like to engage people in discussing where they think large-scale utility solar fields may be built in our county and what are the priorities. One of the things that I would think would be really important is if the company wants to build on ag land, then maybe they have to include it as agrivoltaics or agricultural practice underneath the solar panels so we don't lose that component.
Thank you, that's a great comment. Okay.
Who
Want to do one more? Okay.
I'm interested in the senior living aspect. One thing I think is missing is adult education. Many people who are retired are now ready to re-study, and there's very little. Now maybe we would do it through the college, but also could be done in other ways.
Great comment. This one I haven't heard before. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and flip to our last screen here. So we have the QR code on the screen for you if you want to get that pulled up for the survey. Of course, we have the paper copies here as well. And a lot of questions in the survey drill down into a lot of these topics that we've talked about today. So going back to the visioning, issues, opportunities slides, even though those words seem pretty prominent, some were large, some were small, that's going to change as we collect more input from the public this week and then through the survey. Now the survey will be available for the rest until the end of the year. So we have an opportunity to collect quite a bit of feedback. And I did hear those comments that we want to seek other demographics to take that survey as well as provide feedback. So we hope to get them tonight, obviously, and other times this week. But also the Montrose County is doing a great job disseminating this information through different engagement and outreach opportunities. Of course, younger crowds are also on social media and YouTube. Of course, this is on YouTube. So by engaging in these different avenues of outreach, we can reach out to different demographics. But we'll stick around for a couple minutes. We can talk to you one-on-one. But thank you for coming today, and maybe we'll see some of you tonight.
Let's give them a big